Welcome back. You're watching The Second Wave with Rajeev Chandrasekhar. Rajeev, we spoke about the need for, focusing on key areas to solve the problems, but where there is a lot of government focus, things seem to be getting offhand. Telecom is a classic example, from the great story of reform in India to a segment which is, struggling in many respects. What went wrong out there?
I think this is a great question, and in a lot of ways the telecom sector summarizes to the people who think India is an economic superpower why we are not. 20 years after we have gone into telecom privatization, 20 years, 1991 is when the first tender for private telecom operators were invited. As a nation, if we still can't figure out how to auction a license, there is something deeply wrong with what I call the governance system in this country. Point one. Point two, if you want to look at who is to blame for this issue, and unfortunately we have not assigned blame and responsibility for the telecom model. It is the institution of regulator, which was created in 1998 as an institution of independent regulator to ensure that this kind of nonsense does not happen. In the whole, if you look at the history of the independent regulator from 1999 to 2003, that institution of the independent regulator got compromised and did not do its job. The parliament to whom the regulator is supposed to report to did not oversee the regulator. So you have now a dysfunctional sector, dysfunctional not as far as the consumer is concerned, not as far as the investor is concerned. Totally dysfunctional as far as the government and the independent regulator is concerned. This is really in a lot of ways what we can use to describe the state of India today. We have great entrepreneurs, we have a great market, we have potentially high growth rates, there's a tremendously dynamic population of people, but the government and the institutions of governance, like the regulators, are failing us and are declining every day, getting more and more politicized, less and less transparent, and more corrupt. And that is the entire situation in the context in which we are trying to build $1 trillion of infrastructure. So I agree with you, it's a bad situation for telecom today. It's made even worse after 500 million subscribers. If you still can't figure out how to auction a license, I don't think we have any business going to Davos and saying we are an economic superpower.
What's the way out of this, Rajeev? Because,
it's a simple way.
In a democracy, the right to earn honest living becomes as important as the right to vote. And if the governance is a big issue across the field, what needs to be done about it?
We need reforms. We need reforms, in my opinion. One of the things about India that we are not focusing on enough is, over the last 20 years after economic reform, the private sector and private entrepreneurship has grown. The private sector in India is globally competitive. We can take on, Sunil Mittal can take on anybody, Nalin Mittal can take on anybody, there are smart, Narayan Murthy can take on the best in the world. But the government of India, the government that we all elect and put into place, and the bureaucracy and the administration of India is lagging far behind the private sector in terms of its efficiency, in terms of its commitment, in terms of its ability to understand these sophisticated new models, and so therefore either a crooked entrepreneur getting the better of them or a crooked politician is getting the better of them, or both. So we really need, I have been repeatedly saying, when we talk about reforms and the next wave of reforms, we need reforms in business, of course, we need reforms in economy, but we must also focus on one full decade of governance reforms, where institutions are built. If there is a regulator, the regulator is built to be a respectable, coherent, credible entity that will regulate the sector, whether it be airport regulator, or whether it be the telecom regulator, or the port regulator, or the coal regulator. We need regulators that can take out politics from public policy.
Right. Looking back, are you happy that you got out of telecom when you did?
No, look, I didn't get, it's not a question of being happy. I did 10 years, 11 years of telecom, and I learned the good, the bad, the ugly, the vicious, the not so great, and I also had moments of extreme joy. In 2005, when I gave you an interview, I gave somebody else an interview, somebody asked me, why are you leaving? And I said, the only challenge in telecom now is how to lobby for spectrum. And I'm not good at it, nor do I want to be good at it. And events have proved to everybody, that 2005 to 2008 was all about spectrum hogging. And it was not about building a better franchise, nor was it building an innovative franchise, nor was it about mergers and acquisition. It was really about how do you get spectrum without paying the market price for it.
You know, you got out of telecom in 2005, but you've gone into a series of very, very good ventures, interesting ventures, and you've done well for yourself. And what do you think is going to take for an entrepreneur like you to survive?
Look, my own outlook for the future is that I want to do things that I have fun with. And I after telecom, I swore one thing, that I'd never do business with the government. I would get into businesses that are to do with consumers and my creativity and our management team's creativity. I would not want to get into a business where meeting a minister was the required competitive advantage. So that is something in my mind. Call it a psychological aberration in my mind after 11 years of telecom or whatever it is. So my focus is that India today remains, from a consumer point of view, an exciting market for a series of products and categories, whether it's hospitality, whether it is media and entertainment, whether it is, you know, a whole bunch of things that I'm very excited about the Indian consumer wanting and paying for over the long term. So I like that, and I'm doing that. And I remain extremely bullish about the fact that India as a market and as an economy over the medium and long term will play out to almost all of the marketing hype stories that you hear today in Davos and elsewhere. But it is a medium to long term story, and my investments are medium to long term. Some of them I've been lucky that even in the short term I've done well, but I'm patient. I like building franchises, I like building management teams, and that's what I'm focused on.
Well, do business where there is very little government intervention, and yet you went to Parliament and, you know, Rajya Sabha MP. We head into a short break. We'll come back and talk about what needs to be done for that second wave of growth and what needs to change within the government. Stay tuned.